Madison Whitmore stood in the bathroom of her penthouse apartment, carefully applying mascara while her phone buzzed with messages from friends. At 22 years old, she had everything: designer clothes filling 3 walk-in closets, a Mercedes her father gave her for her birthday, and unlimited credit cards funding her lifestyle of luxury shopping and exclusive Manhattan nightclubs. She'd never worked a day in her life and saw no reason to start. Her father, Richard Whitmore, had built a billion-dollar real estate empire from nothing. He'd grown up poor in rural Iowa, the son of struggling farmers. Through determination and relentless work, he'd climbed to the top of New York's real estate world. His only child, Madison, had never known anything but extreme wealth. Richard tried to raise Madison with values, but his late wife Caroline had undermined those efforts. She'd spoiled Madison relentlessly, teaching her that wealth was their birthright. When Caroline died 5 years ago, Madison was 17 and already shaped by her mother's worldview. Richard's attempts to course-correct had failed. Madison grabbed her Chanel purse. Tonight was the Whitmore Foundation Charity Gala, an annual event Richard hosted to raise money for underprivileged youth education. Madison found these events tedious, but attendance was mandatory. The Plaza Ballroom glittered with chandeliers and Manhattan's elite. Madison arrived fashionably late in her emerald Valentino gown. She found her seat at the head table, annoyed to be placed next to her father rather than near friends. The evening proceeded with dinner, speeches, and auction items. Madison barely listened, texting and drinking too much champagne. When the event coordinator, Susan Chen, approached the head table about a technical issue, Madison interrupted loudly. "Excuse me, this champagne is warm. Could you actually do your job and get me a cold bottle?" Her tone was dismissive. Susan explained she'd send a server as that wasn't her role. Madison rolled her eyes. "God, can anyone here do anything right? What are we paying you people for?" Conversations stopped. People stared. Richard's jaw tightened. Susan excused herself gracefully, but Madison wasn't finished. She turned to her father, speaking loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Honestly, Dad, where do you find these people? She's wearing a dress from Macy's. How is she supposed to coordinate an event for actual society? This whole thing is beneath us." Richard's hand came down on the table, rattling silverware. His voice was quiet, but carried an edge Madison had never heard. "Madison Elizabeth Whitmore, you will stop talking right now. You will apologize to Susan, and then you will leave this event immediately." Madison laughed, assuming he was joking, but his face remained stone serious. "You're kidding. I'm not apologizing to the help, and I'm definitely not leaving. Everyone's watching. You need me here." Richard stood slowly. "I don't need you. What I need is a daughter who understands that every person has value regardless of their bank account. What I have is a spoiled, entitled young woman who's become everything I despise. You will leave now." The room had gone silent. Madison felt hundreds of eyes on her. Humiliation burned through her body. "You can't talk to me like this in front of everyone. Mom would never—" "Your mother is dead, Madison. You're coming with me. We're leaving." Richard took Madison's arm and guided her out. She protested loudly, making a scene that would be in tabloids by morning. In the plaza's lobby, Richard released her arm. His face showed profound disappointment. "Madison, I failed you. I let your mother convince me that giving you everything would make you happy. I created a monster, and that's on me, but it ends tonight." Madison tried to interrupt, but Richard held up his hand. "Tomorrow morning, my attorney will freeze all your credit cards. Your penthouse lease is in my name. You have 30 days to vacate. Your car will be returned. Your trust fund will be frozen. You're going to learn what the real world looks like." Madison stared in disbelief. "You're bluffing. You would never actually cut me off. I'm your daughter. You're absolutely my daughter, which is why I'm doing this. I love you too much to watch you become this person permanently. You're 22. Most people your age are working, building their lives. You've done nothing but spend money you didn't earn and treat people like they're beneath you. That ends now." Madison's shock shifted to panic. He was serious. "What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? Richard's expression didn't soften. You have 30 days to figure it out. Get a job, find roommates, or there's an alternative I strongly suggest. My old friend Tom Brennan runs a farm in Iowa where I grew up. Tom knew me when I had nothing. He's agreed to take you on as a farmhand for 6 months. You'll work, earn minimum wage, live in his spare room, and learn what real work looks like. Madison literally laughed. A farm? In Iowa? Are you insane? I'm not going to some backward place to shovel cow shit. This is ridiculous. Richard's eyes hardened. Those are your options. 6 months on Tom's farm, or you're on your own with no financial support from me. Ever. Choose. Madison expected him to crack. He didn't. They stood locked in battle until Madison realized he meant every word. The panic intensified. She had no idea how to survive without his money. How long? She asked, her voice small. 6 months. Tom expects you Monday morning. Pack 1 suitcase of appropriate work clothes. And Madison, Tom will report to me weekly. If you quit, if you refuse to work, if you treat him or anyone the way you treated Susan tonight, the deal is off. This is your one chance. Madison wanted to scream, but something in Richard's face told her no tantrum would change his mind. And after 6 months, if Tom reports that you worked hard and treated people with decency, we'll discuss reinstating your trust fund. But Madison, your life as you knew it is over. Even after 6 months, you'll need to get a job, manage your money, live like a responsible adult. The penthouse parties and unlimited shopping are finished permanently. Madison felt the ground disappearing. Everything was being ripped away. I'll do your stupid farm thing, and when it's over, I'll prove you wrong. Richard nodded sadly. I hope you do learn something. Because watching my daughter become void of empathy, that's something I can't live with. He walked back toward the ballroom, leaving Madison alone in her $5,000 gown, her perfect life crumbling. The next 4 days passed in disbelief and rage. Madison's friends called incessantly, half sympathetic and half gleeful. Her credit cards were frozen. She discovered this buying farm clothes when her Amex was declined. The humiliation nearly broke her. The morning of departure, Madison stood in her penthouse surrounded by boxes. Most of her possessions would go to storage. She'd packed 1 suitcase with the most basic clothes she owned, though even those were designer brands, completely impractical for farm work. She had no idea what farm work even meant. 22 hours later, exhausted and miserable, Madison stepped off the Greyhound in Millfield, Iowa. The station was barely more than a gas station with a bench. The town looked forgotten by time, a single main street with maybe 10 businesses, old buildings needing paint, pickup trucks instead of luxury cars. An old pickup pulled up, driven by a man in his 60s wearing flannel and a weathered face. Tom Brennan climbed out slowly. He looked at Madison with an expression neither welcoming nor hostile, just evaluating. Madison Whitmore. She nodded, unable to speak. I'm Tom. Your father and I go back 40 years. On my farm, you're not a billionaire's daughter. You're a farmhand. You'll work like everyone else. If you can't hack it, there's a return bus every Wednesday. Understood. Madison wanted to say something cutting, but she was exhausted and scared. She just nodded. The drive took 15 minutes through flat farmland, corn everywhere. The farm was modest, a white 2-story farmhouse needing paint, a red barn, outbuildings and endless fields. Tom's wife Clara met them, small and kind with flour on her apron. She smiled warmly. You must be exhausted, dear. Let me show your room, then dinner in an hour. The spare room was tiny, single bed, dresser, window overlooking fields. After Clara left, Madison sat on the bed and looked around at her new reality. No walk-in closets, no ensuite bathroom, no luxury anything. She lay back, and for the first time since her father's ultimatum, let herself cry. Not angry tears, but scared ones. She had no idea how to do this. The next morning started at 5 a.m. with Tom knocking. Chores start at 5:30, breakfast at 7, 10 minutes. Madison threw on jeans and a t-shirt, stumbled downstairs to find Tom waiting. He handed her work boots. Clara picked these up. They'll do. Let's go. The barn smelled of hay, animals, and manure. Madison's stomach turned. Tom showed the morning routine: feeding chickens, collecting eggs, feeding horses and cows, mucking stalls. He demonstrated once, then handed her a shovel and pointed at a stall full of manure. "Start there. You'll do this every morning." Madison stared at the disgusting mess, unable to process this was her life. But Tom was walking away, assuming she'd obey. She had no choice. She started shoveling. By breakfast, Madison was filthy, sweating, her back screaming. Her manicured nails were ruined. She sat at Clara's table, unable to appreciate the huge country breakfast. "First day is always hardest," Clara said kindly. "Your body will adjust." Madison doubted that. The first week was torture. Madison had never experienced physical labor. Her body rebelled. Blisters formed. Her back ached constantly. She fell into bed each night at 8, too exhausted to miss her old life. Tom was neither mean nor kind, just matter of fact. Clara was gentle, but didn't coddle. Madison called her father twice that week, begging to come home. He refused both times. 6 months, Madison. We had a deal. She hated him more each day. But slowly, things shifted. By week 2, her body hurt less. The blisters hardened into calluses. She started understanding farm life's rhythm. It wasn't enjoyable exactly, but it became manageable. She met the other farmhands, 3 local men who worked part-time. They treated Madison with polite distance, unimpressed by who she was. One of them, Jake, was close to her age and actually kind, showing her easier ways to do tasks without making her feel stupid. By week 3, something unexpected happened. Madison was collecting eggs when a chicken pecked her hand sharply. She swore, then suddenly started laughing. Really laughing. The absurdity hit her. Madison Whitmore, who 2 months ago was shopping on 5th Avenue, was being attacked by a chicken in Iowa. Clara heard the laughter and appeared, smiling. "Bessie get you? She's territorial. You'll learn her moods." It was such a normal, kind interaction, and it cracked something open in Madison. That evening, she helped Clara prepare dinner instead of disappearing to her room. They talked while chopping vegetables. Clara asked about New York, genuinely curious. Madison described her old life, but hearing it through Clara's perspective, it all sounded hollow, empty. By month's end, Madison stopped counting days until release. She still didn't love farm life, but she'd stopped hating it intensely. She learned Tom had known her father as a teenager, that Richard had worked this farm for 3 summers, saving for college. Tom told stories about young Richard, brilliant, determined, but humble and kind. Madison barely recognized that person. One Saturday, Tom asked Madison to accompany him to the farmer's market. They loaded eggs, vegetables, and honey. At the market, Madison watched Tom interact with customers. Warm, personal, remembering everyone's names. He introduced Madison simply as Richard's daughter, helping this summer. People were kind but reserved. Then Madison saw Brittany Ashford, daughter of another Manhattan family, visiting her grandmother nearby. Brittany spotted Madison and her face lit with malicious delight. "Oh my God, Madison Whitmore! What are you wearing? Are you actually working?" Before Madison could respond, Tom stepped forward. His voice was calm but had steel underneath. "Yes, she's working. Honest work. You need eggs or just here to talk?" Brittany looked taken aback. "I was just surprised to see Madison doing this." Tom nodded slowly. "Surprised because you think work is beneath certain people, or surprised because you've never done honest work yourself and can't imagine it?" Brittany flushed. Tom continued, "Madison's learning what her father learned 40 years ago on this farm. That work has dignity, that people are people regardless of bank accounts. That character matters more than credit limits." Brittany made an excuse and left quickly. Madison stood stunned, not by Brittany's mockery but by Tom's defense. This old farmer had stood up for her with more dignity than anyone in Manhattan ever had. That night, Madison knocked on Tom's study door. "Thank you for today." At the market, Tom studied her. "Your father asked me to show you what kind of man he was before money complicated everything." Richard was the hardest worker I knew, but more, he was decent. He treated my parents with genuine respect. He never acted better than us. That's who he was. That's who he wants you to be. Madison felt tears welling. I don't know if I can be that person. Tom's expression softened. You can be whoever you choose. Every day is a choice. Today you chose to work hard, to not snap back at that girl, to thank an old man. Those are good choices. Make enough good choices and they become who you are. That conversation marked a turning point. Madison stopped enduring and started engaging. She asked questions about crops, animals, business. She learned Tom and Clara barely broke even most years, that farming was brutally hard for little profit, yet they loved it deeply. She started eating meals with them, listening to stories. Tom had been a Marine in Vietnam, came home to farm. Clara had been a teacher. They'd lost a son 20 years ago. Their daughter lived in Chicago, visited rarely. They'd had hard lives by Manhattan standards, but seemed more genuinely content than anyone Madison had known in New York. By month 3, Madison barely thought about her old life, except with embarrassment. She'd started following farming YouTube channels, learning about sustainable agriculture. She suggested to Tom expanding the honey operation. Demand was high. Tom was skeptical, but agreed to let her research it. Madison threw herself into the project with intensity she'd never applied to anything. She discovered she was good at problem solving, at organization, at planning. The honey expansion worked. They added 6 hives, and Madison handled marketing, creating social media accounts, building a website. Sales doubled. Tom was impressed, and his approval meant more than any Manhattan compliment. Jake had been watching Madison's transformation with interest. He was 25, had grown up on a neighboring farm, planned to start his own operation someday. He was handsome in a completely different way from Manhattan boys, strong from real work, sun-weathered, calloused hands, but kind eyes and gentle manner. They started talking during work, then taking walks after dinner. Jake told her about his dreams, buying land, raising cattle sustainably, living simply but well. Madison found herself fascinated by his groundedness, by the fact that he knew exactly who he was. He'd never been to New York, had no interest in that world, and treated Madison's former life as curious but irrelevant to who she was now. One evening on the porch watching sunset, Jake asked, "Do you miss it, your old life?" Madison thought carefully. "Some days I miss simple things, good coffee, restaurants, convenience, but miss my actual life? No, I don't miss who I was. That person was terrible." Jake smiled. "You're pretty hard on past Madison. Past Madison deserved it. I was cruel to people who did nothing wrong. I measured everyone's worth by money. I contributed nothing. I was useless and mean." Jake took her work-roughened hand. "Everyone's got a past. What matters is who you choose now. And current Madison? She works hard. She's kind to Clara. She's learning fast. She's building something good with the honey business. That's what counts." Madison looked at this young farmer who'd shown her genuine care and felt something she'd never experienced. Real connection. Not based on what someone could do for her. Just human connection. That night, she called her father for the first time in weeks. But instead of begging to come home, she told him about the honey expansion, about what she was learning, about Tom and Clara and the farm. Richard listened quietly, then said something that made her cry. "You sound different, Madison. You sound happy." "I am, Dad. I'm really happy, and I'm so sorry for everything, for who I was, for how I treated people, for disappointing you. You were right to send me here. I hated you for it, but you were completely right." Richard's voice was thick with emotion. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Your mother would be too." They talked for an hour, really talked, maybe for the first time in years. Madison told him everything, including about Jake. Richard surprised her. "If he makes you happy, if he's a good man, that's all that matters. Character does." Month 5 brought crisis. Tom suffered a mild heart attack while working. Madison found him, called emergency services, stayed calm throughout. At the hospital, while Clara held Tom's hand and cried, Madison handled everything, arranged farm coverage, contacted Tom's daughter, managed what needed managing. The doctor said Tom would be fine, but needed to reduce stress and workload. Madison saw Clara's fear. How would they manage if Tom had to slow down? That night, Madison made a decision. She called her father and asked if he would invest in expanding Tom's operation, not as charity, but as genuine business investment. Her proposal was detailed: hire 2 additional farmhands, expand honey significantly, add a farm-to-table CSA program she'd researched. With proper management, the farm could be profitable enough to support Tom and Clara, while Tom transitioned to less demanding roles. Richard listened to her pitch, asked sharp questions that Madison answered confidently, and finally agreed. You put together a proper business plan, and I'll provide capital. Madison spent every evening for 2 weeks creating a comprehensive business plan using skills she didn't know she had. Jake helped with agricultural specifics, Clara contributed community insights, Tom offered suggestions. The final plan was solid. Richard's investment team approved it. By month 6, the expansion was underway. 2 new farmhands hired, 6 more beehives arrived. Madison created the CSA program, signing up 40 families. She designed marketing materials, managed social media, coordinated logistics. She worked 16-hour days and loved every minute. The 6-month deadline arrived on a cold December morning. Madison woke in her small room, now decorated with farming books and photos of the land, and realized she didn't want to leave, not to return to Manhattan. This was home now. She came downstairs to find Tom, Clara, Jake, and her father at the kitchen table. Richard had driven overnight from New York. He looked at Madison, tanned, strong, hair pulled back practically, wearing work clothes naturally, face clear of heavy makeup. His eyes filled with tears. You did it. Tom's reports have been glowing, but more, I can see it. You're different. You're you. Madison sat, nervous. Dad, I want to talk about what happens next. I don't want to go back to Manhattan. I want to stay here. Keep working on the farm, managing the expansion. I'm good at this. I love this. For the first time, I'm doing something that matters, something real. Richard glanced at Tom, who nodded. She's got real talent for the business side. The community's accepted her. She's earned her place here. Richard smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. I've had my attorney draw up papers making you a partner in this farm. 20% ownership with full management authority. Tom and Clara retain majority ownership, but you'll share profits and have real stake in success. Madison stared, overwhelmed. Dad, I can't accept that. You've already invested so much. Clara took her hand. We want you to have it, dear. You've breathed new life into this place. You've earned it. Tom added, your father and I go back 40 years. He worked this farm and became something extraordinary. Now you've worked it and become something extraordinary too. Different from him, but just as real. You've found yourself here. That's worth everything. Madison couldn't hold back tears. These people had given her more than her father's money ever had. They'd given her purpose, dignity, belonging. Jake spoke up softly. And if you're staying, there's something I want to ask you. Not now, not in front of everyone, but soon. Madison looked at him, understanding, and felt joy bubbling up. Richard stood and pulled Madison into a hug. Your mother once told me the best thing we could do was let you fail, let you struggle, let you find your own way. I was too scared to listen then, but she was right. You needed to lose everything to find out who you really are. The next months brought changes. Madison officially became partner. Her marketing and CSA program grew the business significantly. She and Jake started dating officially. Manhattan friends occasionally called, confused by her choices, but Madison no longer cared what they thought. Her life had real meaning now. By spring, Richard began visiting regularly, clearly enjoying the connection with Tom and reminder of his roots. He told Madison repeatedly he was proud of her, that she'd become the person he'd always hoped she could be. One evening, Madison found an old photo album Clara had left out. It showed Tom and Richard as young men, working this farm 40 years ago. Richard looked genuinely happy in a way Madison had never seen in recent photos. She understood then. Her father hadn't sent her to punish her. He'd sent her to find what he'd once found here, himself. That July, exactly 1 year after arriving in Millfield, Jake proposed during sunset from the barn roof where they'd repaired storm damage together. Madison said yes, without hesitation. They planned a simple wedding on the farm for October. Richard gave his blessing, genuinely delighted. He's a good man. The kind of man I was before I got complicated. He'll keep you grounded. You'll keep him ambitious. You're good for each other. The wedding was everything Madison's old life wasn't. Simple, genuine, full of people who actually cared about her rather than her money. Clara cried through the ceremony. Tom gave Madison away since Richard insisted. You've been more father to her this year than I was for 22 years. Old friends from Manhattan weren't invited. Madison's new community surrounded her instead. After the wedding, Madison and Jake moved into a small house on the farm property. She continued managing business operations while Jake handled agricultural work. They were building something together, something that would last. Richard eventually asked if she had regrets about the life she'd left behind. She thought carefully. I regret who I was. I regret hurting people, wasting time, being useless and cruel. But I don't regret losing that life. That life was killing me slowly. I just didn't know it. What would you tell your 22-year-old self? Richard asked. That everything she thinks matters doesn't. That the people she dismisses are more valuable than those she admires. That work has dignity, simplicity has beauty, and character is the only currency that actually matters. But mostly I'd tell her she's about to be forced to lose everything, and it'll be the best thing that ever happens to her. Richard smiled, satisfied. That's exactly what I hoped you'd learn. Years passed. The farm continued to grow and prosper. Madison and Jake had 2 children who grew up understanding the value of work, of land, of treating all people with dignity. Madison occasionally went to New York for business, but was always relieved to return to Iowa, to the wide open spaces and honest work. Most of her Manhattan social circle faded into irrelevant memory. The person she'd been felt like a stranger now. She sometimes wondered what would have happened if her father hadn't forced her to the farm, if he'd let her continue on her path. Probably she'd have married someone equally shallow, continued her empty life, never known what real satisfaction felt like. Her father's tough love, sending her away, cutting her off, forcing her to face who she'd become, had been the greatest gift, though it hadn't felt like love at the time. Real love sometimes looks like cruelty in the moment. Real love forces you to become better even when you don't want to. When Madison was 30, Richard passed suddenly from a heart attack. At the funeral in New York, Madison stood among Manhattan elite, who'd once been her social circle, and felt completely foreign. Her real family was in Iowa, Jake, their children, Tom and Clara, the farm community. She spoke at the funeral, telling the story her father would have wanted told. About the poor Iowa farm boy who built an empire but never forgot where he came from. About the man who loved his daughter enough to take everything away so she could find who she really was. She finished looking at the crowd. My father taught me that money is the easiest thing to make and the easiest thing to lose. Character is hard to build and easy to destroy. He built his character from nothing. I destroyed mine despite having everything and had to lose it all to rebuild. If my father taught me anything, it's that your bank account means nothing. How you treat people, that's the only measure that matters. The farm became Madison's legacy. She ran it successfully for decades, teaching her children what she'd learned. And she never forgot the spoiled, cruel girl she'd once been, because remembering kept her humble, grateful, human.